Welcome to the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation's Live Better series. I'm Rob Girth, Director of Digital Media here at the Foundation. And today's show is Dr. Dan on Care, what it's like to be on the giving and receiving end. Dr. Dan is really looking for this to be a conversation, and to achieve that, we need to go over a couple little technical details. Let me turn it over to our operator, Susan, for that. Susan?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to join us via phone to listen to the presentation, please dial 1-800-931-1309. Once again, that is 1-800-931-1309. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. And as a reminder, this presentation is being recorded Wednesday, June 5th, 2013. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And just to be clear, so if you want to ask Dan a question, which we can anytime during the presentation, use the call-in number. You don't have to change anything on your computer. You can stay on your computer just like it is. Just pick up the phone and dial the 800 number, which I just put back into the chat, the 800-931-1309. It's in the chat window there, so you can pick it up. And you can do that anytime during the presentation. So without any further ado, here is Dr. Dan.
Thank you, Rob. I want to add something on to what you just said. Not just ask a question, but I want to hear your story. Because both on the giving and receiving end, we both feel alone with this process. And part of the reason we do these web chats is just to connect on a verbal level, just so we can hear each other's stories. Not that there's any answers necessarily, but just so we can feel less alone. So I've been interested in this topic for many, many years, even before my accident. And here's why. I was 28 years old. We had two babies, a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. And my wife, who was 24 at the time, developed a malignant melanoma on her leg. She had to go in the hospital, surgery, chemotherapy, everything, reconstruction of her leg. Now, you can imagine we were two kids I thought I was a grown-up when I was 28, but I wasn't. And we had two babies. And instantly, I was thrown into a caretaker role. So I took care of my kids, or I arranged care for them. I saw my wife in the hospital every day and spent a few hours a day with her. I stopped in at work just to check in and do what I could. I did it all. And at the time, I was training. I was in postdoctoral training to be a family therapist. And my supervisor said, I came in there, and my supervisor said, "How are you, Dan?" And I said what I always said. I said, well, Sandy's doing this, and the prognosis is this. And she said, no. She said, how are you feeling, Dan? And I just started to cry. It was the first time anyone really wanted to know how I was, and I didn't even know how I was. I just started to cry from exhaustion and helplessness and fear and not having a roadmap about this. So that's when I started being interested in this. And then, when I got home from the hospital, my late wife and I had all the conflicts around caregiving and then sex. How can she put a catheter in me and then we're going to make love? And so we had all those conflicts, and I was so busy hating what she was doing to me, for me. I was hating putting her in that position, but I was filled with hatred instead of gratitude. And she was kind of protecting me and protecting herself from my anger. So I've really been interested in this process for a long, long time. So I'd love to hear from you. Anybody want to chime in or call in? I don't know if we have anybody on
Dan,
the
yeah,
line.
we do have, I believe, Jody on the phone line. Jody, are you there?
One moment, please, while I locate her line.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thanks, Susan. Let's see if we got her. And anybody else who wants to call in, a couple people have joined late. If you want to call in and be part of the conversation, like I said before, you can just stay on your computer. That's no problem. And then just dial the 800 number, which is 800-931-1309, 800-931-1309.
And we have Jody on the line now.
Oh, excellent. Go ahead, Jody.
Hey, Jody.
Hello, and welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Hey.
Long-time listener, Dr. Dan, and great respect for all that you do.
Thank
So
you.
I was a caregiver of my late husband who battled Lou Gehrig's disease for 6 years. And it was the greatest role of my life. After that, I don't think anything will ever compare because there was so much love invested. I was his hands. I was his voice. He was paralyzed. And, you know, when you give so much like that and you have such a strong purpose, it's hard to do anything else.
So when did your husband pass away?
In 2001. And since his passing, I've been continuing the ALS journey in his memory.
How so, Jody?
I started a nonprofit for children called Hope Loves Company, and I help children who have parents living with Lou Gehrig. And I continue to advocate for ALS. And I continue to be available for any person who is going through ALS. I give them my cell phone. I give them my email. And whether they're a caregiver or a patient, I tend to understand both sides because I say, a we. You know, when someone is paralyzed and it's a partner or a spouse, it's a we. We are going through this because it takes a team. So,
Jody, what was your husband's name?
Kevin O'Donnell?
Kevin?
Kevin.
So tell me about your relationship with Kevin.
Well, we were
before
very,
all this happened.
Yeah, we were very young. We were married for 3 years, and we had an infant. When he was diagnosed, he was only 30 years old. So we were really in the honeymoon stage of our relationship. And I always say that, and I know your topic is, you know, whether you're giving or receiving. I always say that the roles were meant to be. I am a nurturer. I was a teacher. I am a doer and a giver, and that was my role. And my husband Kevin was, you know, he was funny and heroic and courageous, and he was able to handle that role. Not that that was the role he wanted, but I would have been a lousy patient, and he would have been a lousy caregiver. In all honesty.
Well, what a blessing. You know, a lot of people who nurture their loved ones through the process of dying say the same thing, that
Absolutely.
it's a very painful gift to be death's midwife. I've done it several times, and it's a painful treasure. I wonder what others would say who are caring for family members where there's no end in sight. You know, and it's a different kind of phenomenon. And I'm so grateful that you and Kevin were able to feel love for one another up until the last minute and probably beyond.
We
You know,
actually
that's
renewed
a
our
treasure.
wedding. We actually renewed our wedding vows a month before he passed. So we did. We relished every day, and we were able to still find joy in each day and our time together as a family.
That's great. That's great, Jody. Thanks so much for calling in, and I'm so grateful for the work you do. It must be rewarding.
Well, thank you so much for the program today. I'll be listening as well as you continue.
Yeah, don't go away. Hang in with us.
I won't. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Susan, do we have anybody else on the line?
We do, but Dr. Gottlieb disconnected. I'm just going to reconnect him back. One moment, please.
Okay, well, this is the tap dancing portion of the program. Let me just say, if anybody else is wants to talk to Dan, please take a minute now to dial in to the 800 number, 800-931-1309. And I thank you all for joining us today. These webcasts, thousands of people are listening to them after the fact. We get a nice bunch of people to participate during the live event, and then as we put them out there after that, we have tons and tons of people that are listening to these as they're archived. And just in case you're wondering, you can find those. You can find all of our webcasts actually at ChristopherReeve.org/webcasts. WEBCASTS, ChristopherReeve.org/webcast.
And Dr. Gottlieb is back on the line, and our next participant is Jim. Jim, your line is open.
Hello, Dr. Dan.
Hi, Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to express my problems I have with friendships that I've had since I've been paralyzed. I was paralyzed 2 years ago, and you know, my friendships are always a give and take. You know, I would always have something to give. I'd always, you know, love to help, and then I felt like I was a useful friend. And nowadays it seems as though I am just a taker, you know. I have nothing to offer. I simply, you know, I can say hello and ask him how he's doing, but when it comes time for, you know, if he needs to move or, you know, just any kind of help, it's always me that is the one that's in the need, and it's no longer a give and take. It seems like I'm just always the taker. And it's difficult for me to be a friend when I know I'm always going to be the person in need, the person that's taking. When I used to always like to know I'd be able to give, you know, when the time came. So that's the only thing I needed to express. And
well, wait, you're not going anywhere yet. Don't hang up. Can I ask, apropos of, I don't know anything, how old are you?
50.
50?
Yeah.
So here's the deal. I know that feeling very well. And, you know, I feel like sometimes a taker when, you know, people have to cut my food at a restaurant and take the paper off a straw, and it feels imbalanced to me, yes?
Correct.
And I mean, that's part of the difficulty when my girlfriend does care for me, you know? And I'm so uncomfortable with it because how can I balance that out? But here's what I know, and here's what I've learned, and here's where I'm wrong, and where you and I are both wrong. That what we have inside is more valuable than what we were doing. That the greatest gift one human can give another, and I mean this, the greatest gift is to listen. To approach somebody with a curious mind and an open heart and just want to hear that story only because you're interested in them. And people don't get that these days. And if more people got that, I'm telling you, there'd be peace on earth. And you can do that now like never before. Because you can't be hyper, and you can't run away, and you can't, do all that crap all other humans do. You can just listen. I counseled a woman who was about your age and just took in her 80-year-old mother who was not doing well and needs a great deal of care. And the mother was telling me that same thing you did. I feel worthless here. She said, I feel like a burden. I can't even help my daughter make the beds, wash the dishes. And I said and the daughter kept saying, that's no big deal, Mom, that doesn't matter. And I said to the daughter, what have you always wanted from your mother? And she said, all my life I've wanted my mother to just sit down and listen to me. Just have a conversation and listen to me. That's
yeah,
what
Doctor. It's with my family. I feel like I have things to offer with my family, and I don't know why. When it comes to friends, it's different. Like in my household, I can manage the bills, and there's things I can do in my household that make things run. And I feel like I have an impact with my family, making things better. But when it comes to friendships outside the family, I just don't have that ability to make things. I understand the listening, so yeah, I'll have to understand that I have that to offer.
Jim, do you have any close friends?
I was a pretty good loader there before. I have one or two friends that I'd like to call close. Yes.
Okay. Do you think you could ask them, one of them or both, tell them what you just told us and ask their feelings about it?
Okay.
Think you could do that?
I think I might have actually shunned them away already, but just by leaving messages on the machine and touching on the subject of how much I appreciated his help. When I was injured, he helped build my ramp and help me get my life in order initially. And I think that he just started, it started getting hard on him too, because I never just allowed the friendship just to be a simple thing. It was always me expressing my gratitude, and maybe he had enough of that. I don't know.
Who knows? But I don't know. Maybe you could just say you'd like to talk to him about something that would be helpful for you, something like that. But it's worth a try. It's worth a try because you need to get more information, and not just me, more information about what you do bring to relationships. Relationships aren't about what you physically do for someone. That's a grand delusion. Relationships are about who we are with each other. Not what you do, it's who we are with each other.
Yeah, it just seems like, I'll go to if I go to his house, he'll have to lift me in, get me in his house, and already, there's that need to do for me again.
Yeah.
Before we even get into conversations, it's it's so new to me, friendships being paralyzed. I'm a T5, so I'm not capable of getting there myself, and bringing myself to his home. But then, he's gonna have to lift me into his home, and it's I don't know. It just seems like I'm already, it's not a simple thing. I'm a burden. So it's not a simple friendship anymore. It's a complicated friendship. It's not. Of course, it's not ever going to be like it was. But
listen, you're 50 years old. I don't know any 50-year-old person where the relationships aren't complicated. You're not a child. Any of your friends are not children. They all bring baggage and agendas and personalities and desires and fears. And sometimes you need to talk about it. Who am I to you? And more important, Jim, who are you to you? Are you a burden to you? These are things that need to be talked about. And you can begin with your family. If you feel safe and comfortable with them, that you're making a contribution, do you think you can talk about this?
Oh,
with your family?
My dad's sure. My dad's right here. I'd say I hand-cycled my way over to my dad's house, and he's here talking with me. I thought I was going to miss your webinar, but I was able to phone in, so luckily I was able to make a phone call to you.
Good. Well, I'm glad you did. And I wish you the best. I hope you begin to accumulate more information about what you do contribute to relationships.
Yeah, that's my, just listening, just offering a conversation to him. Yeah, initially, but already, I feel indebted to him just because he's, helped me get on my way, like I said, helped me start my life as a paraplegic. And now what? I could take him to lunch. I've offered to take him to lunch, and that hasn't happened yet. But I guess I just got to keep trying.
Yeah, I've done when I feel like I'm a burden or it's imbalanced. I used to pick up the check for everybody, and I found that kind of therapy got a little expensive after a while.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind doing that for him. That wouldn't be a problem. It just.
All right.
I don't know, maybe he feels like I don't have. I don't know. I'll just have to keep trying.
Where do you live?
San Jose, California.
Oh, well, if I come out there, will you take me out to lunch?
I have to get to know you a little bit better.
Oh, man. All right, Jim. Take care of yourself.
Okay, doctor. You probably got a little more money than me anyway.
Pardon?
You probably have a little more money than me anyway.
I'll go anywhere for a free lunch. All right. Take care, Jim.
You probably have more in common than you know.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
And Susan, do we have anybody else on the line?
Not at the moment, but the lines are open for any questions.
Right. I'll give that number again. It's 800-931-1309, 800-931-1309.
Hey, Rob.
Yes, sir.
When you first posted the number here, way back in the beginning.
Oh, I see one that's all crazy.
Yeah, there was a typo there.
Yes. Let me post it again.
Maybe just.
that conversation with Jim was really an interesting one. I mean, it really touched me because I felt that way so deeply for so long that I wasn't making a contribution. And even with Joan, you know, whenever I was in an intimate relationship, I just felt like it was only going to be a matter of time till they left me, because look at what a burden I am. And then Joan and I went to see, and Joan kept telling me what I brought to the relationship, and it was just what I told Jim. And then we went to see The Sessions. And, you know, that was the movie, I forget his name, based on a true story. And, you know, he was post-polio, wheelchair, completely paralyzed, spent much of his time in an iron lung. And women just loved him. And they loved him for the same reason Joan loves me. You know, it was either despite or because of his vulnerability, but the way he lived his life, the way he opened his heart, the way he carried his vulnerability, not to be strong, but open to it. He had a sense of humor, and boy, did he know how to love and listen. And, you know, Joan said to me after the movie, she said, "Dummy, that's what I've been trying to tell you." And time for us to believe it. I think one of the things that happens here is that we get wrapped up into our roles. You know, I'm a quadriplegic. I am a caregiver. Well, you're not. You're not. That's just a little piece of who you are. You know, you were a man or a woman before this. You still are. You were a human before that, and you still are. Some of the details have changed, but you're a complete person. You know, you are the same being you were before. The body's changed, and sure, it's changed many of us on either side, caregivers or care receivers. You know, it has affected our lives tremendously. But that being inside, that spiritual, precious being inside remains intact. Might be misplaced for a while, but remains intact. So,
I just want to tell you, Mark O'Brien is the guy's name from The Sessions. That's the actual person's name, not the actor. And then another great movie along those lines is Untouchable. I don't know if you saw that. It's a French movie, so I sound very smart. But a wonderful movie, incredibly well acted. And actually the cast, the main part of the cast from that came to our last gala, and they were a pleasure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the director came, and the three lead characters came, and they were just delightful.
Yeah, many people have told me to watch The Sessions, and I keep forgetting to.
No, you mean Untouchable. Untouchable,
and yes.
Yeah.
That is what I will do this weekend. Hey, you want to mention, speaking of caregivers, you want to mention what we got cooking up our sleeves, Rob, for November?
Yeah, let's do that, and then I want to let you know that Jody has another comment she'd like to make, and she's still on the line. But yeah, let's talk about it. You and I have been talking for 2 years, I think, about doing a caregiver conference. And we've actually gone into a partnership with, thanks to you, Dan, with a group called Ingalls House in Philadelphia and the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. So you can't sign up yet, and so you guys are getting information way ahead of time here. So there's no sign up yet. We're still in the planning stage, but we do have a date, which is Saturday, November 16th. And it is our caregiver conference for caregivers to come and spend the day with Dr. Dan. And Dan, you have a little bit more about who else is on our guest list, and a little bit about what it is. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, the program is about mindfulness for caregivers. It's about self-care for caregivers, but instead of talking about it, we're going to teach tools. I'm going to be kind of emceeing, but the main headliner there is a Dr. Michael Boehm. He's an internist, and he's runs the Penn, University of Pennsylvania program for mindfulness. It used to be called the Penn Program for Stress Management. And he's known nationally and internationally for his work and his writing. He's an amazing man. He really walks the walk. You can see it in his whole being. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce that to the large audience in the context of caregiving, in the context of your stories. And then we're going to break into small groups, 2 small group sessions. And, it'll be more intimate, and the teaching will be more personal. But it's set up to be just a wonderful day. And I guess you'll hear about it on the web page.
Yeah, we're going to start promoting it as soon as we have all the details in place. Definitely we have a location all secured, but not secured enough that we can start taking registrations. It'll be a limited registration, a very small charge to come, and but it's going to be. I think we've got room for about 200 folks, so it's going to be very intimate and a very cool day, I think. But you'll hear more about it as we go.
Okay, so there's our brief station break.
Yeah, brought to you by.
Is Jody still here?
Let's see if Jody's there. Jody?
I am here.
Excellent. Go ahead.
So, yes, in response to the gentleman who called in, I just never want to underestimate the value of your emotional input and your ability. For example, every time people came to help us with Kevin, they would come to help us and they would leave saying we helped them. So that
did they ever explain how, Jody?
I'm sorry?
Did they ever explain what they meant about your helping them?
Absolutely. You get caught up in the stress of life. You're angry because the bank teller is slow. Someone cuts you off. They come over, this is another thing I have to do. And then they realize that beauty and love can still exist in the midst of difficulty. And they leave feeling a renewed sense of understanding and appreciation.
Yeah, it does help give people perspective.
Right, and I'm not saying it in a way that's, well, at least we don't have ALS. I'm not trying to say it that way, but there's so much wisdom that can be imparted when you have a disability and you see life differently and you have acceptance, and there's something to be learned there. And many times the person who maybe doesn't have the physicality to help with something can share life lessons and really provide wisdom.
Yeah, and I think the wisdom comes to all of us when we're able to live the lives we have with comfort. Not physical comfort, but be comfortable with the lives we have. And that's when wisdom begins to happen. After that, the world looks different at that point. So thanks for that perspective, Jody. I appreciate it. Did Rob tell you that we have to charge extra for a second call?
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Just, I'll give you my credit card afterwards.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jody.
Thank
now,
you.
listen, I've got a friend of mine who's a caregiver, and if I could read her mind, if she was listening, she'd be saying, yeah, but that's not the whole story of what it's like to be a caregiver. And she'd be right. Being a caregiver is often hard work. It's often thankless work. I mean, I specifically had this in mind when I commented to Jody how wonderful it is that she and her husband loved each other until the very end, if not beyond. But that's not the case for all caregivers and care receivers. Sometimes we get so caught up in the burden of our roles, or the resentment of being on the receiving end, or self-pity on either side, that love is gone. And, of course, many have a traumatic brain injury too, and aren't capable of love. But even without the traumatic brain injury, marriages can fracture here. Relationships can fracture if we get self-absorbed. And even if not, I can hear my friend saying, even if not, it's a burden. And I know many caregivers who have the burden of being a caregiver, have to work full-time to support the family. It's hard, and it's often thankless. And, we all know, all of us on both sides of the bed, all of us know that, there's a great outpouring of care when we need it, and, people kind of drift away. So, it's a hard job for a lot of people. And, I think that's, Rob, one of the reasons for this conference is, caring for caregivers. A lot of them feel trapped, and we've been hearing it on our discussion, Rob, and in our web chats on the discussion pages, people who have.
And I think, in the same vein that, what Jody was saying, that, people left her house saying, that they got more out of it than they gave. It feels like the caregivers I've talked to feel they don't deserve to get anything because their person that they're caring for is in, such dire straits that it's like, I don't deserve a break because, my loved one never gets a break, so why should I get a break?
Right.
And
right.
That's part of what we've done as we've talked about this conference is we want this to be a day where it is a little bit of a break from your regular routine, so you can take the time to walk away for a day and get some education, get some support, gain some knowledge, and even a bit of a respite at least.
Yeah, and a bit of a retreating from,
right.
Retreating from your daily life. Yeah, it's a hard job for the majority, and you're right. Many caregivers don't feel entitled. Many caregivers feel they don't have time, or in fact don't. I mean, one of the things I want to do in the long run, Rob, is do something on video. Set up a caregiving manual, mindfulness for caregivers on video. And I'm sure Michael Boehm and I could do that for people who can't get out of the house. There's so many people who are caregivers who are really struggling with it. And, some of it is for joy and some of it is for love. And it's like the people you describe, how can I take care of myself when my loved one suffers? Well, that's the dark side of love, you know, that, it's really an act of love to make that statement, but it is not a loving thing. Because if tables were turned, what would you want for your partner or your spouse or your child or parent, You'd want
Right.
them to care for themselves. Want them to
And the other thing I was thinking as we were talking is that it's probably many different experiences. It's all unique. But it's got to be a different experience if you're caring for someone who, as you said, is willing to be the person they are and is not pining to be the person that they're not, as opposed somebody who's accepted that and that philosophy as opposed to someone who hasn't yet. It must be, I can't imagine how difficult it would be.
Yeah, the definition of stress is when you want the moment you're in to be different, which is kind of silly because the moment you're in is the moment you're in. And pushing against that is stress. It dumps cortisol in your veins. And so when you're on the receiving end, if you're hating what's happening, you can, and it's understandable. But, if you're trying to fight it inside your own head or wishing it was different or resenting that it's happening or self-pity or any of those things, it just makes this moment worse. It's any kind of pain, any kind of pain. And I talked about this in our discussions, Rob, on physical pain. It's the same thing. So when you fight against the pain, it makes it worse. And when you're laying there being cared for and you don't want to, you're fighting against it. Or when you're giving care and you don't want to, you're fighting against it, and you're going to lose. You're going to lose. I interviewed years ago, I might have mentioned this here, a philosopher, psychologist, and he said about resentment. He said, resentment is like mud wrestling with a pig. He said, you're both going to get dirty, but the pig's going to enjoy it. It's a losing proposition. So, it all sounds good on paper, but how do you do it?
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. Is there anything that you can give today that would help somebody who is struggling with being a caregiver, either something for them or something that they might bring back to the relationship that they're having?
Yeah, I do. And just by coincidence, I saw a woman today in my office who's developing neuropathy in both her feet. They don't know why. They don't know what's causing it. So meanwhile, she's got numbness and pain in both her feet. And you can imagine what she's doing with that. She's got baseline anxiety above normal, so, there's something wrong with my spinal cord. It's going to get worse. I've got ALS or MS. I've got a brain tumor, all that stuff. And she comes into the office and she's panicked. So it's like what we're talking about, Rob, yes? It's like she's fighting with it.
Right.
So she sits down, and I said, close your eyes. I said, where's the pain the worst? And she said, her right foot. And I said, just tell me the experience of your right small toe. Just feel it. And when you start telling stories, just come back. Just focus on that toe. And we did it with each toe. And what she said when she was done was the pain was the same, but it was much better to cope with. So, if you're caring for someone and you're feeling burdened or tired or resentful, that's your story in your head. Just experience what you're doing. Without a story, if you can. If you're changing a catheter, feel the texture of the latex. Feel what the gloves feel like on your hand. If you're turning someone, be aware of what muscles you're using or what noise they might make. And if you're being turned, be aware of the sensations. If you can feel it, the touch of the hand turning you. Because this is your life right there. The truth of your life isn't the story you're telling about it. The truth of your life is what your body is experiencing, not the narrative your mind is doing. And your mind will do it because that's what minds are paid to do. They just tell stories. 99% of them are fiction, maybe a higher percent. But that's my advice. Does that make sense, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a certain degree of control you can take if you're willing to take it, it sounds like.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it is about, it's almost like controlling the narrative. You know? I think an awful lot about our bodies, healthy and unhealthy. And, you know, our bodies experience our lives, but without narrative. They just experience our lives. And we don't pay attention to them very much, other than in mechanical ways, you know. But we don't pay attention to the lives of our bodies and what they're experiencing. You know, just try it right now. You know, if you're sitting down, just feel what the seat feels like. If your legs are crossed, just feel what your left leg feels, your right. You know, and if you can only feel, you know, from your shoulders up, be aware of what your neck feels like, just at this moment, or your cheeks. Be aware of what it's like not to feel. That's a challenge. What's it like not to feel? You're not going to be able to answer that question in words. Just feel what it's like not to feel. Because this is your life. This is your life. That's what's happening right now. That's really all that's happening right now. Oh, I appreciate your asking me to do that, Rob, because I often get lost in, you know, theoretical sermonizing.
I'm very practical. I want take-home stuff.
Yeah, good.
Susan, I'll ask, is anybody else on the line?
Yes, we do. We have Diane, and she has a question. Diane, your line is open.
Excellent.
Hi. I cared for my husband for the last 4 years. I called once before. He had a brain hemorrhage on the basal ganglion brainstem 4 years ago at 58 years old. So his communication was limited on the best of days to winks and thumbs up and hands down, and most of the time not because of the severe spasticity. But he was a brilliant man, and he thought very well, and he never quit persevering to make gains, whether with communication devices or whatever, and I cared for him 24/7 at home. My problem was when he was in hospitals, because for the last year he had a lot of problems with intestinal ileus, hyponatremia, you know, autonomic dyslexia, you name it, right? And we would do this roller coaster ride into in and out of hospitals, and then it was a fight to get him transferred from community hospitals to a teaching university who saw the bigger picture. And so in April he died because the community hospital did not see that he wasn't back at baseline, and would not call his neurologist, who was the head of traumatic brain injury and stroke at National Rehab. I mean, you know, I just couldn't believe the way it had been falling apart. And I was a very strong advocate. And they knew me in the Patients Advocate Hospital
office at all the local hospitals. And so I have a meeting tomorrow with the community hospital of safety and with the president of the hospital, because I'm not interested in wrongful death or everything. I mean, he died days later of septic shock. It shouldn't have happened. But he got 3 feeding tubes in 1 week. I mean, it was there. But I want to talk to them about how I think there's a problem when people enter the hospitals when they're disabled, that they're often invisible, because community hospitals treat for symptoms and don't see the complexity, and so that people get destabilized. And it's really hard to get restabilized when things start cascading. And so I'm trying to figure out how to present this, because I really don't want to go in a bitter way. I don't want people in a defensive mode. Yes, and I've been practicing mindfulness taught to me by the neuropsychologist at the rehab hospital, because I decided after a couple of years I needed that. But so I'm really trying to figure out how, to make, I guess, his death a gift, in that a catalyst to improve safety. Starting with skin care, etc.
All right. Let me offer an opinion about how to present, and then I have a quick question for you in the waning minutes here. So my opinion about how to present it is to know who you're presenting to. And I don't mean their roles or their jobs or their agendas, but know that you'll be sitting with human beings who either feel badly about this, or ashamed of this, or afraid of this, but they feel. You're not going to be sitting in the room with anybody who doesn't care, I don't think.
I hope so. I think there's a problem lately in people are so afraid of coverage. He had 2 health services, that they're leaving the hospital too soon, and then they get the bounce penalty.
Well, I see.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, before you tell them what you think they're doing wrong.
No, I don't want to tell them that at all. I'm hoping to plant a seed, and they don't have to tell me anything else. I'm hoping that they'll take the seeds and use it.
Yeah, me too. How are you doing?
I'm up and down. I miss him, and people don't understand that. People think it should be a relief, and it's not.
Yeah.
He's been married 35 years, and we still could communicate. And I still like seeing him every morning, and he likes seeing me. He was still my husband.
Yeah, of course. Of course. What was his name?
Mike.
Mike.
He was very brilliant. He was brilliant. He had been chief counsel for science and technology for the Department of Commerce, and he had been born with cerebral palsy, and he overcame that. And he wrote a dozen books. He was a really nice man. He was a very ethical man. He was a good listener, and of course, he was an even better listener at the captive audience.
Yeah.
A very nice man. And his friends still continue to visit him and read to him, but they didn't want to be left alone with him. They were afraid.
Sure.
Well,
I've got to tell you, I am so sorry for your loss. I really am. It's heartbreaking when you lose someone you love under any circumstances, let alone that one.
And you just
Diane, I wish you great peace.
Well, I will try to keep an open mind, and you have the right, because I do actually feel that some people, they suffer too. Part of it I'm not saying it well. Because it's not an outcome people were looking for, obviously.
Yeah, right.
And
Nobody.
dated.
No, nobody was. Nobody was. Diane, we have to go, but like I said, I do wish you peace. And I really hope you can find meaning in the aftermath of this and help make some changes.
I'm hoping. And actually, I did talk to one other hospital, and they have a safety board, and they were very interested because they, want to learn from so that they can re-educate to keep patients safe. It's a very different model in a teaching hospital.
All right. Well, take care of yourself, Diane.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
We have a participant. Her name is Trish. You may go ahead.
Hi, Dan.
Is Dan still there?
He just disconnected. I'll be back. I'll connect.
Hi, Trish. It's Rob.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you? Thanks for calling in.
I'm fine.
I'll tap dance for a second. We're right at the end of our time here, so we'll let me do this, which is what I do at the end of every webcast, which is tell everybody that there will be an archive of this posted at some point tomorrow as soon as I get in here and get it up at christopherreeve.org/webcasts, christopherreeve.org/webcast. And also, you can join Dr. Dan and other like-minded people in our community, which is a forum kind of area where you can leave messages and post whatever you want to post. And that is at christopherreeve.org/Dr. Dan, Dr. Dan.
And Dr. Gottlieb is back on the line.
You have one more quick call here. Trish.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Trish.
So I just wanted to say I agreed with most of what you said, but you know how I feel about that, feeling the catheter and feeling the turning and all that. I just want to get it done and get it over with.
Yeah. Of course. I'm not asking you to slow down the process.
I know.
I'm just asking you to be awake through the process.
I know.
So, listen.
Yes.
When you hang up the phone, I want you to call your travel agent and book tickets to come to Philadelphia in November.
Okay. I will.
Yeah, that's not a request.
November 16th.
It's an order.
Okay. I will be there. Sign me up. Okay.
Excellent. More details to come on that, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Trish.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us today. What a great show, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good. I appreciate all of you joining and calling in.
1 week from today at same time, 4 o'clock, same place, Candace Cable will be here talking about a sport to yet be determined, but it's an individual sport that she will cover. And then Dr. Dan, well, you know what, let me ask you right now, not to put you on the spot, but July 3rd, are we going to do a show then, or should we move it to the 10th?
I'm inclined to, let's move it. Oh, my.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll figure the next time we talk to Dan will be on July 10th, which is actually the second Wednesday as opposed to his regular first Wednesday of the month. So July 10th, Dan will be back at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.